Welcome to another Orta Know Better special. Tonight you're joined by myself, Jay, pod regular Karl, and our special guest this week is Leeds United journalist, Beren Cross. How are you doing, Beren?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, not a problem.
It's possibly the best podcast name on the Leeds United scene, I think. When I first saw it, I was very impressed. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I'm really well. Thank you. Obviously, it's an amazing time. Anybody associated with Leeds United, fans, journalists, club staff, it's just a feel-good story, isn't it? So it's quite hard to.
It is, yeah.
To feel down about anything, to be honest.
Do you know what? That makes a change from the last few years, because we couldn't say that before. How are you doing, Karl, this evening?
I'm doing all right, yeah, not too bad. Just got off there a little while ago doing. We have a pod called In Off the VAR, and we have an FAI League of Ireland referee assessor who comes on and digresses us his knowledge on us for the previous games, and he had some interesting takes on a few of the challenges there from between Sheffield United and Man City. So that's an interesting one now to watch, actually.
Yeah,
but I'm good otherwise. Like,
good stuff. So we'll dive straight in, Beren, and we'll just find out first, who's your team?
Oh. I've actually never ever really sort of put it out there, to be honest. I mean, my Twitter header does give it away a little bit. I mean, it's been hidden in plain sight for about 3 or 4 years now. I've got a soft spot for Newcastle,
okay.
But it was, I think the first tournament I remember was Euro '96. So yeah. I was like 6 years old then, and when you're 6 years old, all you do is just you watch it, and obviously all I took in was the fact that Shearer was just banging in everything left, right, and centre.
Yeah,
and my family's not a football family, so I had nobody to kind of follow. There was no team to follow in the team. I grew up in Lincoln,
okay.
So they've sort of hung around the 4th division most of the last 20 years or so. So there was nothing really there to really excite me as a kid. And obviously everybody, as you guys might have found, as a kid at school, it was just United and Liverpool absolutely everywhere, and I wasn't really in for that. And as a little kid, I was just very impressed by Shearer, and I just followed Newcastle really. I think. I mean, other journalists might say the same, but when you start kind of getting into it and it becomes a job, it definitely changes your sort of perspective on it. It's very hard not to kind of fall in with the club that you're following, because you want them to do well. Because if the club does well, the job's easier. It's much easier to write positive stuff than negative stuff. So I do have a massive soft spot for Leeds, and it didn't really hurt that much when Leeds battered them at Ellen Road. I mean, I was there for the game, and it didn't. That was the acid test, really. It didn't really bother me too much. So I'd say a few years ago, more of a Newcastle fan, but now I'm very. The job just teaches you to be impartial. It's just very hard to get uptight about any other club, really.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you're so invested in the club you're following, that you're covering, that you know, it must be hard, because you're going to get to know sort of people around the club as well, and you want to see them do well for them, and like
absolutely,
you're going to have sort of positive relationships with people there and want good things for the team, and like
absolutely,
you say, you get the positive stories. But it must be nice sometimes when you get something juicy to write about, like some of the stuff Leeds have had in the past. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, we've timed it beautifully. I mean, Leeds Live started up in late 2017. So for context, that was Christiansen. And myself and Joe Mewis, the other guy that obviously follows Leeds with me for Leeds Live, we kind of came in about a week or two after Heckingbottom arrived.
Okay.
So we came in, and it was a great brand new website to get involved in, and a massive football club to cover. You know, we couldn't really believe our luck, to be honest. And we took it as it was. You know, we were very happy to be covering Championship football. And then, 4 or 5 months later, Bielsa walks through the door, and we can't believe our luck, to be honest. I mean, we timed it beautifully. I mean, anybody that's followed the club for 15, 20 years has got the short end of the straw, haven't they? And
absolutely.
We've just timed it beautifully. So, I mean, it's like you say, it's very hard not to get invested in the club. You interview the players, you interview the head coach. I mean, everybody loves Bielsa anyway. And like you say, you speak to the club staff behind the scenes, and everybody is pulling in the same direction. Of course, when they do have defeats, you have to kind of be historically, club reporters are known as sort of critical friends. So you're in with the club, you're close to them, you are generally friendly, and you try to remain positive.
Yeah.
But as I say, you are the critical friends, kind of point things out when maybe the club's maybe made a bad decision, because we're there to hold the club to account. The fans unfortunately don't have access to Bielsa or Kinnear or Radrazani on a regular basis. So we're there to ask those questions that the fans want answering.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of the way we see it. We kind of try and remove ourselves from the story and just basically act as a connector for you guys and the club, really. So yeah, I mean, it's just so much easier when they're doing well, and you want them to do well, like you say.
And I guess people at the club are more willing to talk to you when things are going well as well.
Well, you say that. I mean, the landscape has definitely changed. I think, you know, we obviously went into last summer fishing in a different pond, shall we say?
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys would have seen from following the news that suddenly international journalists are picking up Leeds stories because it's international footballers that we're not close to. So it definitely does change where the stories come from. But yeah, I mean, you of course get perks. You do get to hear things on the inside. They do give you stuff off the record that's as a part of that relationship. Because at the end of the day, some stuff they don't want to put out with their name on it, but they want us to put out because they want it out there. You know, if there's something that needs reporting that they wouldn't necessarily want their name on, then they can use journalists on the local patch. So there are definitely privileges and things that you get to hear. But yeah, it's with the way the club is going, it's just changing drastically now. And like I say, they're very much on a global landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was going to say to you, sort of, how's it changed from when you started covering us to covering now? I mean, you've covered a fair bit of what I was going to ask you, actually, without me even needing to ask. It's
as if you could preempt what you were going to ask me.
Yeah, I mean, compared to Heckingbottom and what was going on there, you say like Bielsa walked through the door, then it must have been like a step change at Leeds, because it were chaos still a bit at that point. You know, I don't think that Rads had really sort of fully decided where he was going with the club and what he was doing, as sort of shown by that ill-fated tour of Myanmar. But yeah, everything seems to have just changed at that point. And as you say, it must have been pretty awesome to be covering us through that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just been absolutely wonderful just to be able to watch this kind of football up close and personal every week. And even with COVID, you know, we're so lucky that they've kept the football going, because you can imagine the government could have quite easily said, look, it's just not happening. You know, why would we take the risk? But I think they've realised that football is needed for the population's sanity. And obviously then as a byproduct, we've been lucky enough to still go into the stadiums, and we don't take that for granted. You know, it's a massive privilege. I mean, I can't believe that nobody's seen Rafinha in the flesh yet. Such a travesty.
I mean, we all said it'd be the most Leeds thing ever to get promoted, and none of us actually get to see it.
This is the thing, Jay. I mean, we were so lucky that we got to see the run in last season, but we just could not believe what was happening. We came off the back of that Huddersfield game with the Ayling goal, and absolutely flying. You know, 5 wins in the bounce, haven't conceded a goal ever since Brentford. It was just flying.
Yeah,
you thought, God, this is going to happen. This is unbelievable. Like they're getting better. You know, people like Ayling are just absolutely flying, scoring every week. And then, of course, it all happened so quickly, didn't it? I mean, it just I remember Arteta got COVID, didn't he? And that was kind of the big trigger point where they were like, well, we just need to stop this. You know,
that was it.
It's more than just club staff; it's big names that are getting it. We've got to really sort out what we're doing here. And like you say, even us covering it, we cannot believe that after 16 years, Leeds are finally going to do it. And there's no fans. You just why can't it just be perfect for Leeds? Why can't Leeds just have their day? Yeah, it's just so painful. And then to have again, there's then more and more memories from this season. You know, we talked about the Newcastle game. Of course, Saturday. I mean, imagine the away end on Saturday. I can't imagine it. And it was at the right end as well. Dallas scored. That's where the away fans would have been. It was
There'd
just
have been
perfect.
people on the pitch falling over the barriers. I swear to God, it would have just been pandemonium.
Yeah, so it's just such a Leeds thing that's happened. But yeah, I mean, like you say, we was when we came in, like I say, it was Heckingbottom, and we were still sort of getting our feet under the table and trying to sort of ascertain what Radrazani's motivations were. And yeah, I mean, thankfully, there's that well-documented conversation in the taxi with Victor, and he said, you know, if anybody in the world, money no object, who do you want? And from then onwards, it's just changed, hasn't it? I mean, even that first year with Orta, there was a lot of bad transfers, wasn't there? You know, Wassy Boy is still on the books now. Joe Roy Grott's only just gone. There's many others like that. So I think they were still obviously finding their feet, weren't they, with Christensen?
What was his name?
The Bog. Yeah, he's still on the books. He's still on the books. I think the club he's on loan to have got an option or an obligation to buy, so I think he'll have gone in the summer as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just changed drastically. I mean, since Bielsa's come in, apart from the division, obviously the whole point of Bielsa is he doesn't change things, does he? Once he's in and he made changes, it's very much been sort of as you were throughout. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a feel good, happy place. I can't imagine what it must have been like to cover them in League One. I mean, it's just can't get my head around it.
You can't imagine what it like to watch them in League One.
Just a quick one on that. Are you kind of annoyed in a way that you missed out on reporting on some of the craziness that was Massimo?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you obviously were very, very close to people like Phil and Popey, who were on the front line for many, many years and got to cover all that stuff. And as a journalist, you do absolutely lap it up. I mean, that's the stuff that you die for. Like you say, I mean, it's juicy enough as it is for the last 3 or 4 years with various stuff that's happened. But I mean, obviously, as a football fan, I always read about Leeds and read about Chilino and the stuff that was going on and the frequency of changes in manager. And you, even as a fan from afar, I could not believe what was happening. And yeah, I mean, to have been covering the club at that time, I mean, Phil getting calls from Chilino at like stupid o'clock in the morning.
I was going to say, did he get like some text in the early hours?
It's almost
all the time.
I mean, we couldn't imagine that now with Rajazani messaging us at 2 a.m. and giving us chapter and verse on a juicy story. So I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, really, because I'm sure Phil and his family got sick of it because he must have been working 60-hour weeks just to keep on top of everything that was going on. But yeah, I mean, as a journalist, it's what you live for. It's what you get in the industry for.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Good old Massimo.
Just from being a fan, like just some of the mental stuff that we went through as fans, like high tax and all sorts of stuff, and you're like, are you absolutely sure you should be doing this? Like, you know, I'm all for cutting costs and getting the club on a level playing field, but Jesus, the players are bringing in sandwiches. It's like, what the hell is going on?
He cooked pasta for them all, didn't he, one day?
Oh,
Massimo,
man.
apparently.
It's like, I make the best pasta that will make you win the game, and it's like, no, sir.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, lads. We need to sort of boost morale around here, so I'm going to shut the training ground kitchens. You're going to wash your own kits. I want you in at 6 a.m. every day with your sandwiches.
It's what COVID's like, but without COVID. I mean, that's the sort of stuff you have to do now. I mean, everything's closed. The players have to turn up in their kit, go home in their kit. It's almost like that, but without the excuse.
I was going to say, at least it's not because of a madman this time, but it's because of Boris Johnson. So
this is a football podcast. All right, we're all country.
Yeah, cool. I think Carl's got some stuff he's going to fire at you now.
Nice one.
So, just a little bit more about yourself. How did you end up like going down to Devon? How, like, you're originally from Lincoln, right?
Yeah, well, I was born in Donny, of all places. So I'm a South Yorkshire boy originally, and moved to Lincoln just with family. I can't remember why. I think parents had a job or something, so we moved to Lincoln as kids. 4 or 5. So I've not really got a massive attachment to Donny, to be honest. Lincoln is pretty much where I sort of consider myself from. Family still live there.
Probably for best, to be honest. I used to work.
And then obviously went through school and university, and obviously decided I wanted to be a journalist. Obviously a massive football fan, wasn't too bad at writing, and I thought it was a good way of combining it. And long term, as a kid, I wanted to be a commentator. And back in the day, people like Motson kind of started as newspaper journalists. So back in the day, I thought that was kind of the sort of traditional route, going to newspapers and then try and jump onto the broadcast train somehow. And in the end, I mean, it's such a competitive industry that you basically take what you can get just to get a foot in the door. You know, you need various qualifications. And in the end, I took a news job in Swindon, of all places, which again is not glamorous at all, but so newsy. I mean, you can't imagine the crimes committed in Swindon. I mean, a lot of stuff going on in Swindon. I mean, it's only an hour down the road from London, so all of the drugs end up in Swindon. It's just havoc. But it was a great first job for me in my early 20s.
I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know it was like a crime.
Yeah, it's a good little news patch, and it was a daily paper as well, which is quite a big thing when you're sort of having to turn out 3 or 4 stories every single day to fill 6 papers a week. Sure. And as I say, it was just to get a foot in the door really, and just to get into the industry with the long-term aim of getting into sport. Okay. And then a job came up in Plymouth, and I kind of thought, well, there's not a lot of jobs that come up in sports journalism. And again, it was a bit of a step up. It was at the time Argyle I think they were League 2, so it was worth it. I mean, for context, I'd been doing news in Swindon for 2.5 years. I was desperate to get out, and it was a chance to go and cover football week in, week out. So I took the job down there, and I was saying to somebody the other day that once you're down there, it's lovely. Obviously, you've got Cornwall on your doorstep. Everything. It's a city. It's got everything you need, but it's just getting there. It's so far away from everything. I mean, you get to Exeter, and you've got another hour.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, it was an amazing experience. You know, I didn't have a kid at that point. I had my partner, but we were basically following Argyle up and down the country. They won promotion. They drew away at Liverpool in the FA Cup. Took them back to home park in Plymouth. I mean, all these little things. Got promoted to League One, and just going up and down the country, it was just an amazing experience to have that first taste of following a club home and away.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So that was why I ended up in Devon, and then of course Leeds Live got created by the same company that I was already working for.
Right.
And you don't need me to spell out why I decided to try and go for a job in Leeds, covering Leeds United, compared to a struggling Plymouth Argyle in League One. So that was how it happened. Basically, it was just basically a career move just to try and to move forward and get into sports journalism, really. And in the end, I think what I did down there is what landed me the job in Leeds.
You must have been knackered all the time going to any games, basically, for Plymouth, because everything's so far away.
Yeah, loads of yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, that was the thing. Exeter was the Devon derby, and that was the nearest match, and that was an hour. And then when Exeter weren't in the league anymore, Bristol was the nearest, and that was 2 hours. The nearest away game was 2 hours. So 4-hour round trip.
That's insane.
But yeah, I mean, again, it was just great fun, character building, a lot of overnight stays. You know, staying in the hotels. It just adds to the kind of the weekend event. You know, you go up on a Friday, stay over, do the game, come back late Saturday, and it's just meant that any long trips now are nothing to me. I mean, ironically, I remember I was going to Bradford. I mean, and that was the longest, Bradford away, and now it's 20 minutes down the road. I mean, it's quite strange how it went from 10-hour round trip to Bradford to 20 minutes. So yeah, I mean, it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. Got no regrets. It's why I'm here now, to be honest. It's an absolute privilege to do what I do, to be able to get paid to go and watch Leeds play. So it's great fun. But you know, it's not easy. Anybody that gets to where they are in the job, it's not easy at all. You have to graft. Anybody that you see that's full time, they've had to do a lot of hard yards to get to where they are.
Right. So you had some questions you were going to ask Karl.
I did.
You asked about the Devon move and stuff. So I think you got some other stuff you were going to go through.
How did you end up working for the Mirror? And also, why do people at the Mirror tend to write such stories like they write? Can you give us an insight into that?
I would love to say I did work professionally and full time for Mirror, but it was work experience.
Okay.
So it was going over there and doing 2 or 3 nights a week. But so I can't say that I've ever been a full time employee of the Mirror. But you know, I get completely the reputation that the Red Tops have. I mean, the Sun especially. But I think professionally, when you're in the industry, especially at the age that I was, putting a national newspaper on your CV is a big deal, in it. It definitely just shows that you've had a bit of initiative to get out there and actually speak to some of the biggest places in the country. So no, I would love to say I was full time at the Mirror, but it was nothing more than a few work experience stints.
Well, you made some contacts and got some experience, so you can't
absolutely, mate. Yeah,
can't argue with that, can you?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Just I'd like to ask about summer targets. Have you got any inside info for us?
They're very, very cautious on what they're feeding us out at the moment. I think from what we're told, there's definitely going to be 3 or 4, if not 5, that they would like to bring in. Okay. We did speak to Angus before the January window, and he told us that the way they were looking to go was they'd spent the money they'd spent last summer. Obviously, a very, very sizable investment, even with Premier League money, because they didn't want to then be spending that money every single window thereafter. You know, those players are there to stay for several years now. They're all either in their prime or approaching their prime. So I don't think we'll see the same level of investment this summer. I'd be amazed if anybody thinks that they really need it. I mean, look at where they are on the table. You look at Marcelo's comments after the City game, and even if we're not thinking it, he is definitely looking at how high they can go. I mean, you can't write anything off in his mind. I mean, you know what he's like. He wants to win every game, but
of course he does. That's why we love him.
He's not writing anything off. I mean, I won't mention the E word, but he is not writing anything off. So I think the squad's done incredibly well.
Carl.
Yeah, the squad's
I have an outrageous bet on, and I'm really hoping this year is the year that the bet starts to just come to fruition.
Can you imagine?
Telling you.
Yeah, so I mean, the squad doesn't need a revolution, does it? It needs 3 or 4 here or there. I mean, even people like Dallas. I mean, I've done a few pieces this week on Dallas and the way he's playing now. I mean, it's hard to imagine people purposefully wanting to replace Stuart Dallas. I mean, he's playing that well.
Oh God, yeah.
I didn't really like him much as a centre mid in the Championship, but this season he's just it's phenomenal how dynamic he is, and he's just everywhere, and he's everything you need. And just as Click has dropped off, Dallas has just filled that hole amazingly. And I think every time we do a piece on the team news, it's basically where do you need Dallas most, because you wish you could have 5 or 6 Dallases across the team playing in 3 or 4 different positions.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to imagine people like Dallas, getting axed and pushed out of the way. I think competition for places is healthy. I think Cooper has said that. We've seen it with the centre backs. I mean, the centre backs right now is a perfect example of probably the type of competition they want across the team, because on any given week you could see 2 different options in any one position. So I think a left back's an obvious one. I think is widely discussed now, even though Dallas is really competent there. I think a natural left-footed left back is certainly one they'll be looking at. I think centre backs are obviously fine. Ayling is more than good enough at right back, and of course you've got Shackleton and Dallas as backups where needed. Central defensive midfield, of course. I think Calvin, of course. I mean that remains the problem, doesn't it? When Calvin doesn't play, we just really can't solve it. And again, you read what Bielsa's been saying in recent weeks, and every opportunity he gets, he says that Koch and Llorente can play there. And I just wonder whether I don't know. I don't think he overthinks transfers and the way fans think about transfers, but clearly he's very, very happy to play them there if he needs to. But I think they do just as a body. They need somebody that's more than good enough to come in there and play back up to Calvin, which isn't easy. I think the great analogy is what Spurs are doing with Kane. That how hard have they found it for many years to find somebody that's good enough to come in and is happy to basically say, okay, I'll play 5% of the season because Kane's going to play the other 95%. So
I was thinking that
you need somebody who is either young enough to accept it, or somebody who's good enough to start elsewhere in the team, but can then drop back when they need to. So, i.e., a centre mid, a number 8 that can maybe come in, good enough to start, but can then drop in when they need to. Bamford and Rodrigo are up top. I think that doesn't really need messing with, especially if you're going to get another 10. If you're going to class Rodrigo as a striker, and when it comes to a squad depth chart, then that means you need even more bodies in centre mid. And out wide, I think they're okay. I mean, clearly Poveda is well liked. Rafinha is god. Harrison is going to get signed permanently in the summer. That's pretty much done. And then Costa is the other one. Again, wrote a piece this morning on Costa, and he did pretty well at City. But I think the jury is probably still out on the balance of an entire season. And of course, he wasn't really pulling up trees at Wolves in the Premier League. So, I mean, it's our job to look into things and to write about stuff that's probably, and just maybe exaggerate, not exaggerate, but kind of look into things and overanalyze is probably the phrase I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And Costa might well be safe. I mean, he's got another 3 years on his contract. For all we know, Bielsa and Orta are really happy with him, and he just stays, and the out wide positions are covered. So, 3 or 4, I would think, but nothing as big as last summer, I would think.
Okay.
I'd like to see. I think if Bielsa didn't rate Costa as highly as he does, I think he would have started Poveda perhaps against City. But I think it just shows that he does have confidence in him to be able to go out and perform in a game when he needs to,
Yeah, Bielsa,
so maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, Marcelo's faith in players is incredible, isn't it? I mean, he's so patient.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why they run through walls for him, because even Alioski on Saturday, I really thought Alioski was going to drop out. I thought they'd put Dallas in there, bring Click in, and then play either Alioski or Costa out wide. And he's played Alioski at left back again in a high pressure position. But with Costa, I mean, I think Poveda's injury was so badly timed, wasn't it? I mean, he did his ankle in that game in January with the 23s, and just as Harrison and Costa were struggling to kind of make the position their own, you thought Poveda, if he'd just been fit, he'd have gone in and he might never have lost his place. So I think he is still just trying to find some fitness with the 23s. I expect he'll play on Friday with the 23s.
Mm.
Yeah, he's a good talent. I like Poveda as his attitude is right. Like at the start of the season, or was it last year? I don't know, a young fella came in with a Gucci wash bag and flash watch and all this kind of jazz. And one of the senior players, I don't know if it was Poveda now, I'm just, but it's good
It
to see
wasn't.
Poveda has.
I won't say who it was, but it wasn't Poveda.
Okay.
Well, it's good. It's good to see Poveda's kind of taken that on board, and he's not super flash. He comes across a very nice lad, and that's always a good sign for a player looking to develop under like a Bielsa type manager. Like,
I know exactly what you mean as well. Like Poveda came in from City, of course. Very, very easy for young lads to go into City and get too young, and it was easy to make that assumption. But from what we're here and the people we speak to, he's been brilliant. He buys into it. He's worked hard. Of course, you'll remember he came in at the same time as Augustin, and he didn't make his debut until after lockdown. His debut was the Cardiff game, wasn't it? The first game after the restart. So he had to wait all those months, didn't get a look in through February and March. So he's had to wait and graft hard and do the integration that Bielsa likes to see. Absolutely. But every time Bielsa talks about him now, he waxes lyrical about him.
He does, doesn't he? It's great to see, because he's still a young lad, and the fact that the manager is already talking like that about him, it means good things for him, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think that Man City bit there segues us nicely into your next one, Karl.
Do you think they're going to start keep building on what they're doing with the under-23s, or are they going to kind of relax on that now because they've got quite a good core base for a youth side there? Do you think will there be much spending now?
I think it remains. It's very opportunistic. I think as we saw with Gelhardt, I think that was very much, unfortunately for Wigan, a case of Wigan were in administration and they had to take what they could get. And as I'm sure we'll find out in the years ahead, Gelhardt may well be the best bet of business that the club has done in the last 20 years, if not ever, because he just looks absolutely outrageous. Very, very good player. So I think they will have irons in the fire. I mean, the beauty of the 23s is that they're not expensive at that level. I think Dramé came in for less than 2 million, maybe around the £1 million mark. I mean, the beauty of those moves is that they've all got kind of add-ons and things, and it all depends on how well they do. And I'm sure when Dramé plays for the first team, Fulham will get a bit more money. So I think they will always look at it. I think it will always be on the back burner compared to the first team stuff. They've got Craig Dean, who's the head of emerging talent at the club. He's very much the guy that's tasked with basically watching PL2, the other clubs around them that Leeds are, of course, now playing against, and picking up the best of the other clubs, to be honest, because now they've got Category 1 status. They do have a lot more clout, and they can go into some of these clubs and throw a bit more weight around because of basically the quality of facility they've got, and they can offer these players. And of course, the FA in England want all their best young players to get as greater education and coaching as possible. So they will always be looking at that. I don't think that will ever stop, because if a massive opportunity comes up for a 17 or 16-year-old, they're going to go for it. In terms of their sort of progression, I don't think anybody jumps out to me immediately as they're going to be sort of in the first team next year. I think we all love the idea of an 18-year-old coming in and doing a Wayne Rooney or doing a Michael Owen and just setting the world on fire. I can't see that just yet. I think if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Marcelo, isn't it? I mean, look at the faith he's got in those youngsters. He runs with a very, very small first team squad. And so, as we've seen on the bench, Gelhardt was on the bench at City because Rodrigo was out, wasn't he? So even this weekend, Gelhardt was in the squad. So I suppose it depends on how many injuries they get. I mean, if they have an absolute crisis, then you might see one or two more of them. But I wouldn't say that they're going to sell 3 or 4 of the senior lads now this summer and then replace them with the kids. They'd be replaced with other senior ready-to-go players. I think you look at people like Leif Davis that maybe could have gone out on loan but stuck around because Douglas went out on loan, so they basically needed the cover. And Davis just hasn't played much this year, has he? And I think they will be very, very wary of player development because the players need to play football, and there's only so much they can get from PL2. So obviously McCalmont and Gotts, Edmondson, they've all gone out on loan, haven't they? So I do wonder that maybe with their first year under their belts, whether Gelhardt and Greenwood might well get given a year away. But Bielsa's so hands-on, isn't he? I mean, Bielsa he might well think that his education is better than any loan clubs.
We've had that discussion on the pod a few times where we've sort of talked about whether PL2 is really good enough to develop players for first team football or not, because like Karl, you used to do coaching and stuff, didn't you, with sort of Leeds ladies and stuff, so he knows a bit more than I do about sort of what players need and stuff, but we've got a sort of running debate about whether that kind of football prepares them or not, and we're not sure whether the players who've been sent out on loan to sort of League One, League Two clubs, whether that's because the club does see them as potential future first team players, so they want them to get that experience, or whether the club doesn't see them as players they're going to use, so they've sent them elsewhere.
It's definitely, it's a great question, and definitely one that we think about as well, because we obviously all felt that Gotsam, Calmont, etc. were the best of last year's crop, exactly. and the year before that, and you kind of do think that, oh, maybe they've gone out on loan because they do want them to come back and feature. But I mean, you look at the level Leeds are playing at now. You know, this isn't a mid-table Championship club. You know, this is a team that's established as a mid-table Premier League team. May even finish comfortably in the top half of this season, let alone next season when they want to kick on again. You need to be a very, very good footballer to play regularly for the first team. Now the bar is so high, and you need, if you want to make it as a 19 or 20-year-old, you need to be exceptional, and you know, effectively playing for England's under 21s or playing for a bit like Melier. You know, Melier's in France's under 21 squad. I mean, that's how good you've got to be, to even be considered as a.
I guess the sort of team now playing in the Premier League means that step from under 23s to first team has become that much harder, and that bigger step for those players now, I guess.
They'll be watching them closely, won't they? They'll be watching them closely. Marcelo said a few times, you know what he's like. He's so thorough. He'll watch every 90 minutes that Robbie Gotts plays, and he'll be watching him and making decisions on him. And we have to just trust him, don't we? I mean, the beauty of Bielsa is you can trust his decisions completely, because you know he's not rushed into anything, and you know he's made decisions with the right motivations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he knows who he's going to keep already and who he's going to send out the road. But that kind of brings us on to the next question that I have. Any indication from any of the hierarchy or the manager or anything like that, or anything that you've heard in the grapevine, who's out the door in the summer to make room for maybe these new signings you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that we're all having to kind of think about, because Marcelo doesn't run with a big squad, does he? So if you want new faces coming in, then faces have got to go. So there's a contract offer on the table for Alioski. That's been on the table for several weeks now, and it hasn't been signed yet. So
is it good enough to sign?
We don't know. We can't be party to how much money he'll be offered, but I'm sure, in my own opinion, Victor will know what his worth is, and he will know where he's going to figure and how much somebody of his quality deserves to be paid in the grand scheme of things compared to other players in the squad. Because when everybody's fit, I don't think anybody would start Alioski with a fully fit Leeds team. So I think
right.
And if you're looking to strengthen again in the summer, realistically, he's a bit part player, isn't he? He's going to be somebody you bring in off the bench for fresh legs for the last 20 minutes or so at best, until injuries hit. And as we know, it's a squad game, and obviously injuries will always happen, so he will play a bit. But yeah, I'm assuming there'll be a pay rise of some description just based on what he signed. He'll have obviously had an inflation in wages with promotion, but I'm sure there'll then be another rise on top of that with this new contract. But I wouldn't know how competitive it is in the grand scheme of things in world football and what he's been offered elsewhere. But given it's now mid-April, the contract runs out in 2.5 months, he still hasn't signed with Leeds. It's his prerogative, you know. This is going to be his last big contract of his career. He's got his family to think about. Absolutely. He's got future generations to think about. You have to take the emotion out of it, and he's got to think that he's not going to be a footballer for another 10 years. He's got he's just turned 30, has he? So he's got 3 or 4 years of high level football left before he then maybe winds down back in his homeland. So he's got to think about his family. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you would think, given that it's now mid-April, he surely looks more likely than not to be moving on. So he's an obvious one that creates a gap. Obviously, the centre backs are all fine. Kassir is one that we seem to debate every summer.
Yeah, that was my next one. Yeah, are we going to cut our losses with him, or what's the crack? I'm not saying it from a point of view of what happened, just because he's not featuring. Like, You know,
yeah.
If that hadn't happened and he'd fallen out of the team,
He's not putting any pressure on Melier, is he?
No.
Why are we paying all that money for somebody that's not going to play?
Very, very true. And unfortunately, he's on a still fairly long contract, so I think it's got to be a mutual thing. And surely, in his mid-30s, he hasn't settled. The fans have not taken to him, even off the pitch activities aside. And you just think, like, surely for his own mental health, he wants to just go back to Spain, enjoy the weather, enjoy your family, and play regularly for a Spanish division club.
Yeah.
Rather than it's a bit like the issue with Pablo, isn't it? Which I'm sure we'll get onto. Is that, do you really want to spend your final few years of a one-off football career just sat on the bench at a place where the fans aren't really keen on you? So, I mean, I'm amazed he signed on the summer just gone. I mean, well, not signed on, he was under contract, but I'm amazed that there wasn't more done to try and move him on. But he also, as we know, Kiko, sorry, not Pablo, Kiko.
Don't worry.
I mean, oh no, definitely Kiko. But as we've seen, Marcelo has been absolutely forthright in the way he's defended him to his, to a fault almost. He's defended him to a fault at times. So clearly, there's no issue there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's clearly no issue there. Marcelo is definitely not pushing Kiko out the door. It's going to have to come down to Kiko and Victor to have some sort of conversation about what happens and whether there's interest. We talked about Alioski and his contract. Kiko's on a decent contract. He's got his family to think about. He's not going to jump ship and walk away from a very lucrative contract unless he's getting similar or maybe a touch less for regular football elsewhere.
Wage somewhere, is he?
So he's another one, but again, whoever you bring in wouldn't come in and replace Melier. You look at somebody who's at best at an equal level and can really push him and put him with a proper pressure and maybe even take the shirt off him when he drops out of form.
Yeah.
We've talked about right back. I think that's fine. That's all sorted. Defence midfield, there's nobody really to move out, is there? And then you're getting on to the likes of Costa and then Hernandez maybe. I mean, I can't see the likes of Click moving on. I think, if anything, he might even well sign another deal at some point. I think he's got more than enough credit in the bank for us to understand that it's just a very short-term blip for him. And I think he's not, even as a squad player, he's very, very dependable. So I think, I mean, the other two, I mean, Alioski looks fairly clear-cut. I think Casillas is going to come. I mean, I don't think any of the fans would be too surprised if Casillas went. And then the other two are probably, like, say, Costa and Pablo, and the decisions need to be made on them.
Just a quick one on the goalkeeper scenario. If we do kind of get Kiko to mutually agree to leave, I suppose is the way to do it, really. But there's rumours of Johnson from West Brom. Is there any concrete story there that you can maybe fill us in on? Sam Johnson, the goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's not a name that's come through to me from anywhere. I think he's obviously very, very steady with West Brom for now. I think he's clearly, it's a classic case of a good goalkeeper in a bad team, isn't it? Because he makes so many saves. Another clean sheet at the weekend. I think West Brom are going to go down. I think we all know that. So I'm sure somebody will look at him. I mean, maybe even the teams coming up may look at him. But he's not somebody that's come to my attention on the Leeds beat.
Do you think Rodrigo's safe?
Do I think Rodrigo's safe?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, did you see the Instagram post? The Instagram post that he put out. I mean, that was brilliant for us.
But yeah,
I love it. Don't you just love it though? The clarity. It just nips it in the bud straight away, because we can report what we can, but you can't beat hearing it from the horse's mouth.
Absolutely.
It just stops it dead completely. I think he was really, really upset with the way that all came out. I think it came from a Spanish gossip column originally, and then the Sun of all people picked it up. And then, of course, it gains traction over here. And I think, quite rightly, he just thought, I'm just sick of this. I mean, unfortunately, players shouldn't have to come out and dispute any lies, because people shouldn't lie in the media. You shouldn't write mistruths, and players shouldn't have to then come out and say this is a lie. People like us should do our jobs well and make sure that what we write is accurate. So it was a shame he had to do that, but I'm pleased he did, because it showed everybody that it's a non-story.
Yeah, I think most of us are pleased he did, to be fair. It was nice to see that. It's nice to get a bit of passion from a player, especially.
Oh, yeah. He loves it here.
Like that, who,
everything we hear.
He might think this is shit here. I've had enough of this. People are giving me hassle, but no, none of that.
Everything we hear, he loves it here. He is he's settled in really, really well. I think, like you say, it's very easy to kind of assume it's a Spanish international record signing, a bit of an ego, but it really hasn't. You know, we got to do an interview with him a day or two after he signed. He was still in Spain, and we did it on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just amazing. Like, what a guy! He was so upbeat and happy to talk to us. We're just a regional press in West Yorkshire, and he was happy to talk to us. You know, he wasn't keen to get off the call. There was no hangers on. There was no mediators kind of telling him what to say and what not to say. It was just he was such a lovely bloke, and that my opinion of him has not changed. You know, every single time you see him, he's got a smile on his face, fits him well with the group. Every interview that Cooper does, he says that there's no bad egos in the group. I completely believe that. So I think he's here for the long haul. You know, he's not come here for 1 year and he's going to leave. He's here to make a success of it.
All right, cool.
It's nice to hear that. Yeah, it's kind of reassuring, you know.
Yeah,
you hear,
he's a really,
like
really
you
nice
said,
guy.
you hear a lot of stuff, like, and it can get a bit tedious at times, like, you know.
Yeah, it can. So we were going to say, have you heard any kind of rumblings about possible future investment this summer? Anyone else sort of wanting to get involved in the club, especially given like this season's success?
Yeah, I think the 49ers stuff is probably quieting that all down. I think before the second batch of investment that came obviously earlier this year from San Francisco, I think there was always that possibility that somebody may well swoop in whilst the 49ers had such a small stake. And Andrea, you know, he's an enterprising businessman. He's never going to close the door on investment. He's always open to people helping him. I think the top brass at the club, the hierarchy, they've always said that they're anybody that's willing to come in and help the club move forward is welcome to at least get in touch. I think Andrea said a few times that he gets many, many, many offers of varying quality, almost on a weekly basis. But no, I think the 49ers stuff is very, very real. You know, of course, they've now got the vice chairman in Parag Marath, who again is another very, very impressive guy. We've spoken to him a few times. Very, very impressive. Knows his stuff. He hasn't got to where he is by being an idiot. You know, he's very, very serious and importantly ambitious. Very ambitious, which I think is why this summer there will be more investment, because they're not messing about. You know, promotion was very much just base camp, in the words of Kinnear. Promotion was not the end of the journey. That was basically getting back to almost like not even level par, because Orta has said a few times that level par is Champions League football, isn't it? Because that's where the club was at the turn of the century. So
yeah, absolutely,
they're not messing about, and I think the 49ers are a very, very good organisation to be in bed with. But I think if you're angling at QSI stuff, then no, I wouldn't expect anything like that.
Cool.
It's good to see with the 49ers that they've invested in a new stadium for themselves. That Levi Stadium, you can do a virtual tour of it online.
Yeah.
Holy cow, like absolutely unreal. And if they can put half of that effort into just even redeveloping Ellen Road and having it to even that standard, we're in for an absolute mental ride altogether. Like,
very ambitious people.
Do they with those NFL stadiums? They're just,
proper organisation.
Is that Mercedes stadium? Is it in Arizona or Atlanta? Where the dome just closes like that. Jeez, it's mad, like mad.
I don't think we'll be getting that at Ellen Road anytime soon, Karl.
No.
Don't want to disappoint you.
No, I won't be disappointed. I like the open air stuff anyway. It's better.
Yeah, me too. So, did you apply for Phil Hayes' old job?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I think
were you tempted?
I think Leeds Live is really, really good. Like, we're really, really happy with what's going on there. I think it's a really good website. I think it's really easy for people to read. I think it's set out really well. We've got good bosses. There's nobody kind of pushing us to chase after clickbait. I think you'll always get accused of it in the modern age, because if you haven't got a subscription model like The Athletic, then you are almost, unfortunately, you're always got page views on your mind, and you've always got you need to kind of engage people, and you need to engage them with quality content. And I think that's what they've always pushed with us, is that you get the readers and you get the views by putting out good stuff that people want to read. So it's been a really, really good place to work. I think a lot of us were surprised when Phil decided to move on from the YUP and go to The Athletic, but you know, we hear in the grapevine what The Athletic are doing, and when you hear about what's going on there, it's no massive surprise when you actually understand what's on the table there and what they're looking to do. And I think, you know, in defence of Phil, you know, he's doing what a lot of us want to do, in that he's now having to write less but better quality, and he's getting the time to go out and get the interviews that we'd all love to have the time to do. But unfortunately, when what you're doing is free to read on the internet, you just haven't got the time to go away for 2 or 3 days at a time and go and chase people. I mean, especially before COVID, when you might have had the chance with Athletic to go abroad, you see a lot of amazing stuff where they go abroad to meet people face to face. We just don't have the time for that. So I can see why he made the move, but I didn't apply for his job. No, we're very, very happy at Leeds Live.
How do you find the whole sort of Leeds United Twitter environment? It's insane. It's either like we're going to the Champions League or we're getting relegated, depending on the last game, and just people are crackers.
They're bonkers,
I think it's a community that you definitely enjoy engaging with. I think you do get a lot back from people. I think you can have conversations, however friendly or antagonistic, with whoever you like for as long as you want. So I think we would never say that we were unhappy about having an engaged fan base. I think it makes our jobs a lot easier knowing that people want to read stuff. They want to hear information. They want to read your opinion on stuff. I think a lot of football writers in the country don't get that. We have a lot of people that are colleagues on sister websites and sister papers who don't get anywhere near the kind of interaction we get, because we're so blessed to have such a massive and passionate fan base to write for.
Absolutely.
So Twitter is definitely something that you should log out of at times, especially after defeats. I think because it's our job. It's obviously very, very intense. You're on it more than 8 hours every single day. The evenings you try and have with your family, so you do try and sort of bug out of it a little bit in the evenings. But yeah, during the games, I mean, especially on days like Saturday, it's just amazing, because everybody just wants to just talk about it and talk about how brilliant it is. And I love getting into a debate with a few people on when was the last time they got a better result than Saturday. And I think there was various theories on maybe Old Trafford or the Champions League days, Deportivo or the San Siro, maybe even further back than that. I think there's obviously various scales. I think Swansea away last year was obviously better for different reasons, but in terms of a one-off 90-minute football game, the context of who you're playing, the fact you've had a man sent off, and they'd lost. I think they'd won 27 of their previous 28 games. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Doesn't happen. Just amazing. It's just amazing. I mean, like you say, it just makes you miss the fans even more. Instead, that's the big thing. We just miss the fans. So even on losses or draws, you just miss the fans so much. Like the City game at Ellen Road, Leeds would have won that with a full stadium. They were playing. It was so close to winning it anyway. If they'd had 35,000 in there roaring them on, they'd have won that game. I mean, there's just little things like that you really miss.
Absolutely. And players who breed confidence from the crowd, they're just like, they're missing that, and I think that probably affects Click a little bit. And
he's a crowd junkie, that guy, man.
That's
He's
true,
a crowd junkie.
I can't wait to get back there, and it's coming, guys. It's coming.
Not far now, not long to go.
That's it. Not far at all.
Yeah. Be all right.
All right, cool. Well, it's been a really awesome chat, this, Beren. I won't keep you much
appreciate
longer. Really
it's flown by. I can't believe we've been on nearly an hour. So
I know.
I'm sorry if you had more questions for me. Hopefully, I've given you a bit of insight into the job and how lucky we are.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been really good,
class.
actually. I mean, I didn't know how much sort of you'd be able to give us, but it's been fantastic, to be fair. I've really enjoyed it.
It's just nice talking about Leeds, isn't it? As we said, it's just an amazing time to be involved with the club.
Yeah, you'll have to check out. We're starting doing an hour live cast of our post match thing called Berardi and Coke.
Yeah,
you'll have to
another amazing name. You boys with the names, fantastic.
Some great minds in there, I'm telling you.
We're doing a live one on Monday. If you fancy tuning in for that, that should be something to consider. It's an evening kickoff.
Absolutely,
I'll be fairly busy, I think, after the game, but I'll try and catch up.
Oh Jesus! Yeah.
You can watch
Forgot about that there for a second.
I'll watch it back.
So just for you, finally, Beren, have you got sort of anything coming up that you want to sort of share with us or tell us about? Any stories we should look out for? Have you written a book?
Imagine if we all had the luxury to write a book. I mean, the season is so relentless, and it's basically we just go from match to match at the moment. So you can obviously get Leeds news anywhere you want to read it, but obviously we try and do everything we can live where possible. We're going to speak to Bielsa tomorrow, so Bielsa's on at lunchtime. So if you want to check him, what he's going to say, we'll obviously have our live blog on Leeds Live, and then going into the game. It's Monday night, isn't it? So we've got a long old wait for the game. But I tend to go live on Facebook before and after the matches, so you can find it on Facebook. It's out on Twitter as well. We tweet all the links and stuff. But no, nothing nothing extremely special, but yeah, just try and soak up the last few matches of the season with whatever you can.
So just for good measure, while you're on, Beren, I don't know if this will go out before or after the game, but have you got a prediction for us?
Well, I mean, how often do they surprise us? I mean, every time you write them off, they dig something out, and Liverpool have looked definitely. I don't know if weak is the right word, but more vulnerable. Vulnerable is the right word, I think. And they have looked a bit better in recent weeks. Of course, they beat Villa, they beat Arsenal, but it's Villa and Arsenal, isn't it? Any kind of Villa or Arsenal can turn up. I think I'd take a 2-2. Would you two? Would you take a 2-2? Take that?
I'm after blood. I want to win, mate.
3-2 then. 3-2 Leeds.
Just want to say thanks for joining us. To anyone watching, thanks for tuning in again, and hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. And obviously, give us a like and subscribe on our usual channels: YouTube, Acast, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. And keep a lookout for our regular main pods and our post-match Brady and Coke.
And Leeds Live and all of the articles and stuff that come with following the account as well. So
thanks,
yeah,
Carl.
and we'll have links to your Twitter and to Leeds Live in the comments when we post.
Cheers, guys.
So
appreciate that.
We'll give you a little plug and all that. Least we can do.
I've taken up enough of your time anyway.
It's been awesome. Thank you very much, guys. And Carl, I will see you later, and Beren, we'll have you on again at some point.
See you soon, guys. Enjoy the rest of the season.